Okay,
Jeff,
bit of a rough start. Or go ahead, sorry.
We got no audio, and your camera's showing something. I'm not sure what it is.
Good evening here on YouTube. Sorry, just a little bit of a rough start. We got only just a few people here in the Google Meet here. Where's that audio coming from? w0tx.org/meet. Check out more info on there, but we'll probably get started here in just a few minutes here. Yep. If you were watching on YouTube, sorry about that. There was no audio for quite a while. um, if you are watching on YouTube, we are mostly on chatting on w0tx.org/meet, Google Meet, but we are streaming on Denver Radio Club, w0tx.org or excuse me, youtube.com/Denver Radio Club. This is the Denver Radio Club Elmer Session, just a great place to learn about ham radio STEM topics. We have another 30 minutes. If anybody has anything, let us know. What else here? I can certainly bring a few things up here, but if anybody's working on any projects, somebody has any things that they want to bring up for the group, let us know.
Well, I could ask more questions about my shack I just talked a minute about.
No problem. Yeah, go right ahead.
So, and the other thing that I have partially figured out is the grounding. So when I thought I'd ask one more question about that. So that coax, once I bring it down the mast, I got one of those little ground plates that attach around the base of the mast that I can put a ground rod in, which I bought. And then I was going to run from there over to a what do you call it? A lightning interrupter. What am I? I'm using the wrong term there. Um,
An arrestor?
Essentially an arrestor, right? And that needs. I was going to put in a second ground rod for that, but I was noticing when I was surfing around, there's apparently a difference between a ground rod and a lightning rod, and I wasn't 100% sure if I need to worry about that when I attach that arrestor to the other rod. Is there some distinction between a lightning rod and a ground rod that matters?
I think they're just talking, there's a difference when in electrical stuff, when you between neutral and ground, but for what you're doing.
Well, doesn't an arrestor usually provide an air gap that the
Yeah,
charge can jump to
right.
shunt it off of your equipment?
There's different types of things that they use for that. So sometimes glass tubes with others with what's called an MOV. But that's more for electrical stuff.
So as
Yeah,
long as it's conductor and it's in the ground, big
yeah,
thick copper rod is going to do it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, you just probably want to have that the arrestor typically where it comes into your house is the best place to have them, or in outside of the house or directly just directly inside with the ground going out to your rod. Depends what you can do. For weather, you probably want it just inside, I suppose.
Typically, a lightning rod is something that attracts lightning. It's put up on the top of a building
Right.
with
Yeah.
a heavy gauge wire that runs down the building into a ground rod. And what the hope is that lightning will strike the lightning rod and then pass harmlessly in the ground instead of being conducted, through the building.
Got it. I have a tall tree nearby that perhaps one day it's going to be twice as high as my mast. So maybe eventually I can put something on that. So the lightning might like that better than the mast since it's not too far away. And then I could ground that.
Lightning's very unpredictable.
Right. I guess you never know where it's going to go where it wants to go.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that'll get me started. I appreciate that. I was holding off on buying a couple of these things till I had my act together. Appreciate the input.
Yeah, of course.
There's a link there to a good YouTube that explains lightning rod versus ground rod.
Right. When I was on DX, for some reason, the actual rod in the ground, they had a distinction. And I didn't know if there's some different type of rod, the grounding rod that mattered, but it sounds like it's not a huge deal. As long as it's,
Typically, they're a steel rod with copper plated. That's what I think most all of them are, is a steel rod that's copper plated.
that's what I ended up getting. So
You're
sounds
good.
like it's going to work.
Grounding
T-flows.
is a whole science.
And I mean to watch. I know we have a video in the library. I'm intending to watch, I guess, on a past presentation on that too. So I got to watch that as well.
Well, you're starting the right direction anyway.
Right. It's a learning curve, right? I have a drawer full of wrong things that I've bought now. I
Exactly.
guess that's part of it too.
You'll use them eventually.
Trying to find that video here. If
I wish that I just had a drawer full of stuff,
Right. I guess I'm just getting
but I've
started.
been at it a long time. So the longer you go, the more you collect.
Bring it to Hamfest, right? And just sell it to somebody.
Yeah, that's an option.
yeah, from the man himself, Ward Civil N0AX. Yeah, we had a meeting by him a year ago, August 18th, or 2 years now, 2021. Time flies on grounding and bonding. So I'm sure that's a pretty good resource to check into as well.
Well, right there, see, they're showing a ground. See that connector?
Yep, that's exactly what I got. That same one.
Grounded to the, well, you don't know, to the mast, it looks like, or else, well, no, it looks like there's a ground on the lower right corner of that bracket looks to what appears to be a ground.
Sitting right behind
I would guess anyway.
That's what I got. Looks like the same one.
Okay, very cool. Yeah. Yeah, as you mentioned, you bought plenty of the wrong things, so yeah, it's good to know what to buy and why, what its use is, and
right. You think you have it figured out, and then you realize, whoops, I forgot something. So that's why I'm
yeah,
asking more questions. So I try to minimize that.
yep. Very cool. All right, we got another 25 minutes. Anyone else? I think I don't know if anybody else has joined this evening so far on the meet here, but anyone else? Let us know. Let's see, I can play maybe a quick minute or two of a video here. Oh yeah, this is, I guess I'll just play a couple minutes of this. This is a pretty cool documentary by the Montanan, put on by the University of Montana School of Visual and Media Arts program. It aired on the Montana PBS November 24th, 2022. So really well shot and really well produced. So yeah, just it follows Montanan amateur radio enthusiasts to show the loyal community of amateur radio explore what it means to be ham and how they're trying to keep the hobby alive. So I'll just play a couple minutes of this, and if you want to check it out on YouTube, you can do that as well. So I'll just play a minute here. Let's see.
thousands of amateur radio operators, hams, prepared for their first man in space. On orbit day 3, excitement peaked among hams all over the world. And then amateur radio's Man in Space went on the air.
This is W5LFL in Columbia. W5LFL in Columbia, orbiting the Earth at an altitude of 135 nautical miles. Passing over the U.S. West Coast and calling CQ. So W5LFL in Columbia is calling CQ and standing by. Go ahead.
W5LFL, WA1JXN, WA1 Japan, X-ray Norway, Frenchtown, Montana. WA1JXN, standing by.
Hello, W1JXN. This is W5LFL. Picked up your signals fairly weakly. I think our attitude is not really the best as yet, but you're our first contact from orbit. WA1, Juliet, X-ray November.
Element, expeditions. I would go back to him. But anyway.
Yeah, Jeff, to be fair, I didn't know what the topic was going to be. and I'm really not the right guy to give you a Colorado section update. So I came with another presentation.
Like I said, we're just grateful you're here, Jeff. Thanks.
Well, my pleasure. You know, I got to visit with you guys at least once a year, you know.
Hello, Doron. Yeah, um, not quite true. Um, it happened a long time ago, and it was the city of North Glen. I had a had a beginner home up there, and I wanted to put up an antenna, and there's a lot of row about how you just can't go and do that. And PRB1 had just been enacted, allowing amateur radio operators all over the country to put up antennas to make their hobby useful to the people of the country and forward the causes of education in the electronic hobbies, et cetera, et cetera. And it it got taken to the Colorado Supreme Court, uh, and as a result of the presentation at the Supreme Court, they ruled that uh, they wanted to fulfill the intent of PRB1, which was a national federal law, and they would not go against that. And so I could put up anything I wanted within some. I don't believe that uh, North Glen at that time had a really bad ruling, but it was something like 35 feet, 40 feet, something like that. And so I stayed within that, but they were going to outlaw antennas above the roof level, and it did go to the Colorado Supreme Court, and it was a win. And after that, ham radio operators all over the country were able to reference that law and the backing of PRB1, and a lot of people went out and bought towers and did wonderful things on the air with them.
If you want to read up on it, just go Google Basinger versus City of North Glen.
Yeah, I have nothing against Lakewood. I mean, I'm a volunteer for the police department, for God's sake. No, City of Lakewood has been very good. And when I wanted to put up 50 feet of tower here, all I did was say, I'd like to do that. And they said, well, you're within the under the auspices of the rule that we have, and your presentation of how you're going to build the tower and make it safe with wind restraints on it. Since I live on the south side of Green Mountain, and when the big heavy winds come, they come ripping around the south side of Green Mountain, and they cause a spin to occur. And people don't notice this unless they have a tower and they've watched a beam antenna on top get whipped from side to side as the winds try to spin it right off the top of the tower. It's a real frightening thing. I saw it at 73 miles an hour once. And so I have two levels on the tower that have Roan torsion restraints on it, so that the wind can't just come and tighten up the guy wires and screw it into the ground. The torsion bars knock the torque way down. And so I presented that before Lakewood, and they said, hey, fine, you did it right. So we do have to go through some things like that from time to time, and understand what's acceptable in a city. And then, of course, when you sign a covenant agreement in a residential area, then the city and the feds and whoever else is involved really can't do anything because it's laid on top
It's a
of.
private contract
Yeah, it's a private contract, and
that you
a lot of
willingly signed.
a lot of people don't realize that they say, oh well, I can sign it because we both like the house and we're gonna move in, and they can't really mean it, and oh, a year after we move in we'll put up an antenna. Illegal, and no one's gonna back you up.
Interesting to hear you say that, Dave. This thing I'm building is over here just outside of Old Town Arvada, just on the west side here. And so my part of Arvada also has a height restriction. So I'm restricted to 40 feet here, right next to the food bank, if anybody knows where that is. And I also have, however high I do go, I have to be set back the same distance from the property line. So if I go to 40 feet, I also have to be 40 feet away from all the property lines. But of course, we're not going to get the 70-mile-an-hour winds quite as likely here as you are over there by Green Mountain. But we can sure get, 30, 40-mile-an-hour gusts. But anyway, I've been incorporating some of that thinking you just mentioned here into this shack that I'm building too, because of course it applies here as well. And I've got that 40 feet to think about.
I know, Edgar, I'd asked the discount tire that used to be on Ralston Road about the wind speeds.
Right. We get them once in a while. And I had my mast up when that recent wind event came through, and it did fine. And I don't have any guy wires on it. So I was pleased. It stayed up. So that was a good sign.
We did 42 miles an hour yesterday. That was the peak gust, and that's from the Davis weather station at the 40, where is that? About 43-foot level of the tower. So
Right. I just painted my mast, trying to make it a little more stealth, so blend in a little more. Nobody seems to care around here, but I'm still trying to be cognizant of all that, so I don't attract any unwanted attention.
You're not going to make it look like a 40-foot pine tree like they do with the cell towers?
I went with a flat gray. I didn't know I couldn't find sky blue, so I went with a gray.
can I tell you what I do every year, which keeps the neighbors very nicely, pleasantly smiling in line? I built, about 20 years ago, I built a 5-pointed star, Christmas star. And it's 1 yard from one point to the point pretty much across from it. Anyhow, it's built out of 1x1 pine, and every year I put on my climbing harness and I rip roar up to the top, and at the 55-foot level I lift this thing into position and throw in 2 U-bolts into the mast on the top of the tower, and then I turn the lights on, all LEDs, and it can be seen from a long way away, and people use my ham radio tower to show their friends how to get to their house. They'll say you turn until you pass the beautiful star up on a big high tower, and then you turn after the second block past that, and and the entire neighborhood gets people around through the Christmas season.
That's a great idea.
Using my star, and I am quite pleased to do it. I have never had a complaint.
I may have seen it
Yeah.
driving over there. It's a great idea.
One thing we can always be is friendly
True that.
and helpful, and we attempt to be both. Going to take a break before the meeting starts. Goodbye. See you later. I'm glad I was here at the right time to hear my name.
Known for our experimental supersonic airplane, stretching Orion's wings before the next flight, and technologies to help fight wildfires. A few of the stories to tell you about this week at NASA. The experimental X-59 aircraft being built for our Quest mission has been outfitted with its lower empennage or tail assembly. Teams can now continue final wiring and system checkouts in preparation for integrated ground testing. The X-59 is designed to demonstrate the ability to fly supersonic and produce just a quiet sonic thump instead of a loud sonic boom. Teams at our Kennedy Space Center recently tested a solar array wing to make sure it extends correctly. 4 of the solar arrays will be installed on the Orion spacecraft for the Artemis II mission. Artemis II will be the first Artemis mission to carry astronauts around the moon and back to Earth. The Acero project, led by our Ames Research Center, is using drones and advanced aviation technologies to improve wildfire fighting coordination and operations. Acero's airspace management technologies provide situational awareness to help responders avoid conflicts with aircraft operations. Having this situational awareness could also enable them to safely integrate drones into the firefighting effort. Our Lucy spacecraft recently captured its first look at 4 of the Jupiter Trojan asteroids the mission plans to visit. From more than 330 million miles away, the spacecraft spotted Eurybates, Ptolemy, Lucas, and Oris. The asteroids are just single points of light, but the team can still use the imaging data to prepare for the future up-close observations of Lucy's targets. That's what's up this week at NASA. For more on these and other stories, follow us on the web at nasa.gov/TWAN.
Okay, thank you. Find the right files there. So anyway, welcome everybody. I'm Jerry, WOGV, club president, and welcome to the session tonight. I don't know, Jerome, if the problem with the website may cost us some visitors